Welcome to another video on business startup tips from Hillingdon Chamber of Commerce. Today we're discussing some basic legal tips, and we welcome along David Trood, partner at local solicitors Bird Lovibond. Hi Dave, how are you?
I'm fine, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. First of all, perhaps can you tell us a bit about Bird Lovibond? How long has the company been around? What sort of size is the company?
Well, we've actually been around for 117 years. We were originally founded in 1850 by Mr. Bird. There aren't any of the original partners still working there, although some fairly close. We have about 40 staff currently. We're spread across 3 offices, our main office in Uxbridge, and then 2 branch offices in Ruislip and Greenford. The Uxbridge office is in Vine Street, and we've currently had it completely refurbished.
So can we start off with something that it seems to cause a lot of confusion, and that's naming a business. When you come up with a business name, what's the rules? And once you've decided on a name, how do you protect it?
Well, certainly care needs to be taken when you set up a business and you name it. When choosing a name, you should certainly check any databases you can, internet search engines, domain name registries, trade journals, that kind of thing. Companies House also provides a company name availability checker that you can check the proposed name against any companies that are registered. Even if you're not setting up a company, that's a useful search tool to use. If you are setting up a limited company, then the name does need to end in the name, the word limited. Once you've decided on a name, you can apply to register it as a trademark to protect the brand. You can do so yourself, either through the gov.uk website, or you can instruct an appropriate legal professional to do so. You can obviously also register a domain name, which is very important. Certainly, you want to avoid other businesses setting up and taking a similar internet name. You can search the domain name on registries. There are various ones out there, and they actually feed through into actually registering that domain name.
And something else that seems to cause confusion is the different types of companies. So we've got freelancers, sole traders, partnerships, limited companies. Are there any others? And can you explain the differences?
A sole trader is simply a self-employed person who's the sole owner of their business. It's the simplest business structure, and therefore it's the most popular. You can set up one for tax purposes via the gov.uk website. A limited company has more formalities. It's got its own legal identity, which is separate to the owners. The owners are known as shareholders, and the managers who actually run the company are known as directors. A limited company does offer limited liability, which is the main attraction of it. That means that the personal assets of the owners are not at risk unless they agree to personally guarantee a liability, such as a loan, often for a bank. The liability of a sole trader is unlimited. There are also tax advantages to limited companies over sole traders in terms of the rates and amounts of tax that are charged. There are more formalities to setting up a limited company. So there's a cost to setting up one, which there wouldn't be in terms of setting up a sole trader. Also, information on companies, which is held at Companies House, does become public. That would include information about the directors and also about the company accounts. As well as sole traders and limited companies, another option is a partnership. And that effectively can be a bare partnership, which is effectively the same situation as sole traders, but just with more than one person. Or you could have a limited liability partnership, which is more akin to a limited company. And a bare partnership or limited liability partnership offer the same advantages and disadvantages as a sole trader or limited company.
So if you're a sole trader, things are probably quite simple. Maybe you're a painter or a gardener. But once you form a company with somebody else, do you recommend some form of legal agreement between the parties so that everyone agrees what should happen if someone wants to leave, or some other maybe worse scenarios?
Oh, absolutely. It's essential if you're entering into a partnership, either a bare partnership or through a limited company or limited liability partnership, to have a formal agreement set out. If you set up a limited company, then there are formal documents, memorandum of association and articles of association, which set out how the company is run and how decisions are made. You can use standard templates, and these can be adapted as necessary for the individual organisation. If it's going to be a bare partnership, then there should be a partnership agreement or deed prepared. And certainly that needs to set out the formalities of the relationship. For example, how the profits are going to be shared, how decisions are made, how disputes are resolved, and also an exit strategy. For example, if one partner wants to end the company or sell it, how is that going to be dealt with if the other partner doesn't?
Yeah. And can you give us perhaps some more general tips on things to watch out for when starting a business in general, some sort of common business pitfalls to watch out for?
Yes, certainly. So, I think one of the key things is to decide how you're going to select your customers and suppliers. Certainly, it's worth avoiding putting all your eggs in one basket, which increases the risk to a business. Whilst it's great to have one large customer who gives you a lot of work, the difficulty is if they change their mind, if they go out of business, then that can have an immediate detrimental effect on your business. It's also worth knowing who you're dealing with. You can carry out credit checks. For example, you can get a copy of any outstanding judgments, which would certainly be a red flag against the company or customer that you are going to deal with. If you're dealing with limited companies, it's worth checking on Companies House. Again, that has details of their directors. It also has details of their accounts, and it would set out if there were any particular problems with that type of company. Most disputes arise out of the parties having different expectations or understandings of what was actually going to be carried out, what was agreed. And therefore, it's always worth having proper terms and conditions prepared and ensuring both customers and clients are aware up front of what you're actually agreeing to do and what the cost is going to be. Equally, it's worth checking the terms and conditions of any suppliers. These can often contain things which actually, if you're aware of at the time, you can either change through negotiation or alternatively decide not to proceed. One example I can certainly give from my personal experience is that I did some work for a care home who had entered into an agreement with an agency for supply of temporary workers for the care homes that the company ran. The terms and conditions which were set out included payment of interest at a rate of 8%. However, this was 8% per day, and therefore a dispute on outstanding fees of £5,000, which became overdue by 9 months due to an argument about whether they were due or not, actually became a dispute about interest of £100,000. And whilst this was ultimately resolved, it obviously caused a great deal of stress and additional legal costs for my client in actually getting that resolved. Other people are often unaware about what they can do in terms of unpaid invoices and payment terms. It's certainly worth being upfront about payment terms and checking what payment terms you are being given by suppliers. The terms and conditions should be clear as to when invoices are due to be paid. In many contracts, particularly if you're going to have to pay out for suppliers up front, then it's worth getting payments on account. That's certainly something that solicitors would do and is very good practice. Secondly, if it's an ongoing contract, then it's worth billing regularly so that improves cash flow, but also will flag up any problems that could arise in terms of the relationship as it develops. Other considerations it's worth bearing in mind are if you start employing people. This doesn't necessarily mean having a staff of 100 people, but certainly if you employ 1 or 2 people occasionally on a casual basis, then that increases the regulations that you're required to comply with. For example, it's obligatory for employers to have insurance to cover their employees against accidents. Certainly one instance I recall is I had to advise a builder who had employed some temporary labourers but hadn't insured. one of those labourers fell off a ladder and had a fatal accident as a result. And the builder was then facing a substantial claim, which he wasn't insured for, both for the injury element, but also a fine that he was employing people without being insured.
Wow, pretty serious stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about more insurance-related things in another video, so watch out for that one. Well, Dave, that's been fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today and helping us out with some legal tips when starting a business. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, by the way, or Bird Lovibond in general, what's the best contact details for that?
Probably the easiest way is to look on our website, which is www.bird-lovibond.co.uk. That has all of our direct contact details for each of the solicitors that we employ, and for the branches as well. And it sets out in detail the kind of work that we do.
Lovely. Thanks so much for joining us today, Dave.